opportunity to have an assembly. It's been a while since we've been able to gather all as a group. We're excited about being able to do that, and we're super excited about some of our student speakers. We're excited about our guests sharing with us today, and just the opportunity to learn about the importance of Black History Month and what that represents. So I know we're all going to learn something today, and I know we're going to have a really enjoyable time as well. So I've been looking forward to this for a long, long time. I want to say that I appreciate Ms. Jasmine Barnett for making this happen and organizing all of this, and Ms. Buchanan for doing some writing to kind of lead up to some of our student speakers. We had a lot of people who wrote some great things, and you're going to get to hear a few of those today, but we are definitely appreciative of everybody who shared and everybody who was a part of making this possible today. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Ms. Barnett. I will say, students, I don't need to say this because I know the type of people that you are. I know how responsible you are, but I just remind you to be on your very best behavior, to be attentive. This is not a time you need to have your phones out. This is a time you need to be present, and you need to be paying attention to not only your colleagues, but also your staff and also our guests. So we're excited about being here. So even though she's one of us, let's go ahead and welcome Ms. Jasmine Barnett.
Good morning, everybody. Good to see you guys. Glad to be here. Some of you all might be wondering, what is Black History Month? Why do we celebrate it? It's just a time to highlight some of the great achievements of African Americans. And as you know, it hasn't always been a beautiful history, a beautiful past. But a lot of people did a lot to overcome. I know in your social studies courses, you have. If you haven't, you will cover the civil rights movement, and you will learn more. But this month, we hope we've educated you on some things, and we hope to continue to do this and to make it an annual event. To start us out, I have some readers. They're going to read a poem. It's called The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman, and she was the National Youth Poet Laureate. So I'm going to invite them to come up, Messiah, Hudson, and then reading the second half of the poem will be Kylie and Brennan. So you guys come on up.
So when day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We brave the belly of the beast. We've learned the quiet isn't always peace. In the norms and nations of what's just, it isn't always justice. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we gathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country, in a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself presiding for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from prison time, but that doesn't mean we're striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge a union with purpose.
Colors and characters of conditions of man. And so we lift our gaze not to what stands between us, but to what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first. We must put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach our arms out to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the will, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew. That even as we hurt, we hope. That even as we are tired, we try. That we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never know defeat, but because we will never sow division.
Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all bridges we make. That is a promise to glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare. It's because being American is more than proud being parent. It's the paths we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it. Would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. In this effort, very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith, we trust. For a while, we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared at its inception. If we did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So why once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent, but bold, fierce and free.
We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation because we know our inaction and inertia will be inheritance of the next generation, become the future. Our blunders become their burdens, but one thing is certain. If we merge mercy with might and might with right, when love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. Every breath from my bronze-pounded chest will raise this wounded world in a wondrous one. We will rise from the golden hills of the west. We will rise from the windswept northeast where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked south. We will rebuild, reconcline, and recover. In every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country, our people diverse and beautiful will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade of flame and unafraid. The new dawn balloons as we free it, for there is always light, if only we were enough to see it, if we were only brave enough to be it.
Good job, guys. Appreciate you all. So we had the MLK Keep the Dream Alive essay contest, and want to thank everybody who participated, but want to go ahead and recognize those who won and even the honorable mentions. So let's start. Honorable mentions, Kylie Baum, stand up if I say your name. Give us some love. Stand up for my first, second, and third place winners. We're going to start out with our third place winner, Miss Chloe. And then following her, second place, Mackenzie Johnson. And first place, both were so good, we had a tie. Lately, Judd and Macau Chopper. So,
Dr. King's dream still matters. There are plenty of reasons why, but here are mine. Dr. King's dream still matters because black men and women should be able to hang out near or with white men and women without being looked at weirdly. Dr. King once said, one day in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls. People shouldn't be judged by their color. Even though people have different skin colors, don't make us different from each other. If a black person robbed a bank and a white person robbed a bank, they both did the same crime, so they both should get the same amount of punishment. Nothing less or nothing more. Black men and women need freedom, just like white men and women. Black men and women should have the same rights as white men and women, and they should have access to stuff that white men and women did. So you see, Dr. King's dream still matters, and it's very important that we all get treated the same. Dr. King's dream has to stay alive. I need to do something about it. Equality and freedom is all Dr. King wanted. I don't want to keep his dream alive just because it's all he wanted, but I also think everyone should be treated equally and we should all have the same amount of freedom. And I also want for Dr. King Dr. King's dream to come true because he ain't here for it. I will treat everyone equally. I want everyone to think that they are equal no matter what skin color they have. Every time I see someone enter a building, I can greet them all equally no matter what skin color they have. Or if I don't greet a male or female with black skin, that don't mean I'll treat a white person any better. I'll treat them equally. I could join an organization or a group going against racism. I could go around spreading the word that racism ain't right and we are all the same even though we look different. Just because someone has a different skin color doesn't mean they are any different than someone with white skin. From what I just read, please help keep Dr. King's dream alive because everyone deserves to be treated equally, nothing less or nothing more. There are quite a lot of reasons I could say, there are quite a lot of things I could say about racism. Racism is not right and it's still a problem today. It's not as bad as it was a long time ago, but it's still a problem. I have a goal that makes sure that everyone is treated equally because no one in this world is more special than anyone else. We are all the same. If you don't see anyone around you even trying to prevent racism, be a role model. Just because people around you aren't doing anything about it doesn't mean you don't have to. You can be a role model to your community and maybe people will start doing what you're doing instead of being caught up in their own lives, and they can help the lives of people that are going through racism. Don't assume things just because you see an African American doesn't mean they're a bad person just because of their skin color. Little do you know they could be way nicer and a way better person than anyone you know, but you wouldn't know that because you're too caught up in judging them by their skin. Stop treating people terribly just because they have a different skin color. It's not funny or mature. You need to realize that you're the same as them and you don't know how much you're hurting their feelings. So please try your best to be a role model and stop this racism.
On January 15, 1929, in Atlanta, Georgia, Martin Luther King Jr. was born. 35 years later, he gave a beautiful prodigious speech about equality around the world at Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. This speech was about MLK's dream that his 4 little children would one day live in a nation where they would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Although racism and race relationships have significantly changed around the world, his legacy and hope still matters. There is no doubt that African Americans are still judged and treated poorly because of their skin color in today's society. King's dream about racial equality matters now in today's society more than ever. If you watch the news or just listen to what is going on around you, you will realize how bad racism affects our world. It is a terrible trait to have because you are judging somebody on something they cannot control nor help. I mean, think about it. Would you want someone making fun of you because of your skin color? You should always think about the other individual's feelings before saying or doing something you will regret. America has always been racist throughout history and still is today. Most people think racism no longer exists because we have a black president and everyone has equal rights, but that is not the case. Not a lot of people are educated about racism in Dr. King's dream, so they just act like it does not exist anymore. Since not a lot of people are educated, they do not know they are being racist most of the time. Dr. King made our world a better place to live in, but we still have laws that are fighting for everyone to have equal rights, no matter what color your skin is. We can keep his dream alive by taking action and doing what his dream is about, which is freedom. Everyone deserves civil rights as well as freedom. One of the easiest things a person can do to keep his dream alive is to befriend someone who is a different race than you or has a different culture than you. You can just accept them for who they are. My best friend is a different race than me, but that doesn't make me love her any less. She has helped me through a lot and I wouldn't change anything about her. In my personal experience, I have met a lot of racist people that have hurt some of my best friends. I just do not understand why people would be so mean to somebody who was no different than them. Being racist is basically judging someone without getting to know them first. Our generation needs to become more open-minded to situations like this. If we become open-minded, then we can understand how racist we are and have become. Put yourself in their shoes. If you would like to be treated the way you are treating them, then you know you're wrong and you need to stop doing it. Dr. King was a great leader who stood up for what he believed in, which is why he is still famous today. He was arrested 29 times for doing what was right. He was shot by a white guy just because he was black and doing what was right. He is so important we even get out of school for a day.
Letting down the dream. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. These are the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in 1963, and And now, almost 60 years later, they are still true. Despite all the work people of color have put into have equal rights and opportunities, those goals have still not been achieved. You may ask what we are doing to let down Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream. How would the current state of our society disappoint him by showing that his dream is still exactly that, a dream? You may be asking yourself, why exactly is Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream so important? Well, allow me to explain. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was one of the most important and influential figures in the American Civil Rights Movement. His dreams of equality were a call for freedom and equality to all of America. The I Have a Dream speech is still a major cornerstone of pop culture and the modern-day civil rights movement. It is used in songs, poetry, literature, etc. According to the New York Times, 50 years later, it is a speech that can still move people to tears. 50 years later, its most famous lines are recited by school children and sampled by musicians. 50 years later, the four words, I have a dream, have become shorthand for Dr. King's commitment to freedom, social justice, and nonviolence, end quote. As you can see, Dr. King's speech has influenced modern-day culture and politics. The first way that we are letting down the dream is police brutality and discrimination in the criminal justice system. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, quote, "We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality," end quote. We have seen countless examples of the murders of unarmed black people by law enforcement officers. One of the most recent examples would be George Floyd, a case in which Officer Derrick pressed his knee to George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. A local example is the murder of Breonna Taylor. She was killed in her own home. Black people also make up 40% of the U.S. prison population, even though they only make up 13% of the population. This is because black people are 20% more likely to be sentenced to jail time, and usually face 20% more jail time than their white people who have committed the similar crimes. Lastly, black people are more likely to be arrested than their white counterparts. This could be because black people are, quote, 5 times more likely to be stopped without just cause than a white person, according to the NAACP.org. Did you know that 65% of black people have felt targeted because of their race? The criminal justice system is unfair to black people and other people of color in the United States. This has resulted in many circumstances of police brutality towards black people. The second way that we are letting down Dr. King's dream is employment of African Americans in the United States. Employers in the U.S. don't want to hire black employees. Did you know that African Americans are 2 times more likely to be unemployed, according to BenJerry.com? And this has been going on for the past 60 years. Most places are more likely to hire someone with a college degree. However, the same rule does not apply to black applicants. Apparently, black people with college degrees are twice as likely to be unemployed as all other graduates. This is a prime example of inequality. These people pay thousands of dollars for a college education just to be turned down by employers because of their race. Did you know that some employers even go as far as to judge their applicants by their names? A study done by the National Bureau of Economic Research showed that applicants with quote-unquote white-sounding names are 50% more likely to get callbacks than applicants with quote-unquote black-sounding names, even when they have identical resumes. The lack of employment of African Americans in the United States is a disappointment to the dreams of Martin Luther King Jr. Finally, the last reason I will touch on is the treatment of black students in the American school system. Black students are more likely to face harsh punishment than white students. Did you know that black students are 3 times more likely to be suspended than white students who break the same rules? Police are often more likely to be involved with black students than white students. Even though they only make up 16% of enrollment, 20% of black students are referred to law enforcement. This influences the amount of black students being put in prison. After they are in the criminal justice system, when they are adults, black children are 18 times more likely to be sentenced as adults than white children. This is not because black people are more likely to be criminals, bad students, rule breakers, etc. This is because systematically, black students and children have been criminalized. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, quote, "The purpose of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically," end quote. How are black students supposed to learn that when their school systems are not even allowing them to be in school enough to learn the skills they need to be successful? In conclusion, I think it is a pleasant thought to think about all the ways we are keeping Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream alive. However, I think that we must face the harsh reality that even though Dr. King had his dream 60 years ago, Those dreams have still not come true. We must first face our failures before we can take the appropriate steps to improve them. As we have seen, our current society is an insult to Dr. King's dreams. Through our failures with police brutality, failures in employment rates, and failures in the education system, we're simply still dreaming. At some point, we must stop dreaming and take action. That time is now.
On August 28, 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. made one of the most iconic speeches in American history. Over the last 58 years or more, there have been many failures, also great success regarding Black life in America. In his I Have a Dream speech, he said that little Black boys and Black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls and walk together as sisters and brothers. Dr. King's main message was that Blacks should have the same rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness that whites had. He wanted the nation to take responsibility for what it was and is a free nation under God. Dr. King wanted everyone treated equally. Equality is the state of being equal, especially in status, rights, and opportunities. This nation is unequal and Blacks are far behind whites in every category. It is unfair that Blacks get the lower hand just because of the color of their skin. People shouldn't be mistreated because of their race. It is ridiculous to think that this is still a big problem that has been occurring for decades now. People like to stereotype African Americans and think they can't do great things in life. We're all equal in race, and no race is better than another. Leading by example is a big part of keeping his dream alive. We need to stop ignoring the issues of today's world and actually make a change. For example, the Montgomery Bus Boycott is a huge movement that took place from 1955 to 1956. Rosa Parks refused to give up her bus seat to a white man, and for that she got arrested. That's when Martin Luther King Jr., a pastor at the time, became a prominent leader for the civil rights movement. Rosa did what she thought was right and wasn't going to let any arrest or anyone get in the way of that. She led by example, and that is what inspires me to be who I am today and do what I think is right no matter the circumstance. So I think educating people about racism and addressing the issues in our community will help a lot and solve some of the problems. With that being said, I hope you got a good understanding of how racism has affected people throughout the years. Martin Luther King Jr. accomplished so many things during his life and impacted my life deeply. If it were not for him, I feel like that there would be lots more racism in the world. I hope y'all got an insight on how I feel and we can all help this community change for the better.
Let's give them one more hand. And now, you get to hear from two great men. I'm going to ask Mr. Campbell, some of you know him as Coach Campbell, to come up and introduce our speaker today, Mr. Derrick Campbell, his son. So give it up for Coach Campbell.
I want to say thanks to Miss Jasmine letting me do something I've never done before. That is introduce our son. Mary and I are very proud of our son. He is obedient and he's done quite well he's very kind. I tell you, he has a kind heart. Some other thing about Derrick, he has a sister who calls him her little big brother. She's oldest and she's always looking out for him. But Derrick is a graduate of Green County High School in 1994. He played just about all sports, including tennis 1 year. He's class president in middle school. They've had a championship for his problem solving. He's today he's married to Misty, has two children and two grandchildren that we're very proud of. Eden is 8 and Jackson is 10. He's working presently at the University of Louisville as an assistant athletic director. Also, he is the chief diversity officer of the school. So would you all help me and my wife to welcome Derrick Stephen Campbell.
Well, some of that was right, but I really appreciate you all, and I wanted to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for being here, but I want to thank Jasmine and Principal West. So I have a little something for Jasmine. Please stand, Jasmine. Everybody, give her another hand. So we play tonight for the Lady Cardinals, and this is a jersey that they'll probably wear. We have something that it's Unity Week, and we wear these patches. So if you watch the women's team tonight, these patches will be on it. So it's a wonderful team right now. We're in the top 4, top 5 would be one of those teams that might win the national championship in women's basketball. So Jasmine's done a wonderful job. I've heard some of the best speeches that I've ever heard from anyone. Like, you all were just rocking it. I'm just so proud. And you were not nervous at all. So good job. So give them a hand again. For just a great time. This is a wonderful school. So I never actually got to go to this school. Kevin and I were in the same class, and they kept telling us the whole time, we're going to get you in the new middle school. We never got to see it, so then we got tortured by going to the high school every single day by seeing how nice this is. And 30 years later, this is still an amazing school, so give yourself a hand. But somebody did leave this outside on the floor. It's a Slim Jim. Somebody dropped a Slim Jim. Now, you take great pride in the program, and I really appreciate just all the great things that you're doing. So I won't be long. Just wanted to show you a few things. I kind of started finding what my thing was and my love, and it was sport. And when I was a baby, the first thing, I couldn't find the picture, but the first thing I said was probably ball, right? And I used to carry a bat around all the time and just say ball, ball. And that was something that I loved. So my dad was a coach, and it's going a little fast for me. So my dad was a coach, and I really loved just being there with him for practice every morning. So my 3rd grade football coach is here too. His name is Coach Van Leader. Wave for him, Coach. Focus on what matters most. We're going to run left, we're going to run right, and we're going to do a sweep. I was going to throw the pass, and we're going to win every single game because I threw it to my buddy Richie. And it kind of happened like that all the time. And we're up there somewhere because we were a really good team in basketball as well as football. So I'll say that to say this. I was also on the Future Problem Solvers group too. We loved the academic team. We loved the quiz bowl. We love traveling to the state capital. We love going to all the different colleges in the state. So please take advantage of every opportunity that you can in every single thing. What else is there to do, right? Let's always try to strive to be the best in all that we do. So this is my grade school team here, and I was probably 11 there, maybe 10. So my son is 10. And he looks like that now. He's as tall as my parents. So that's my daughter, Eden. She's 8. And Jackson is 10. And this is what I do it for. So you have to have motivation. You have to have things that you really care about. And when I went to college, I didn't lose sight of that. I didn't lose sight of this wonderful place. This, you have a lot to be proud of. I heard those speeches today, and I can't say that there's a better one that I hear from freshmen in college. I promise you that. So keep striving, keep doing well. College is not as hard. It's not for everybody, but if you do find your niche, it's a good place to really explore things that you've never seen and see places you've never seen. Y'all can hear me pretty well, right? Yeah. Thank you, thank you. So this is where I've been. I started off at Louisville, played football for a little bit, hurt my knee, learned that there were other things to do other than sport, and the business of sport, which is much different than actual playing the sport. So I had some opportunities there, moved up a little, and then we went to LSU. LSU was really fun, won a national championship, made it twice. Nick Saban got us the second time, so we couldn't get two. We also won one in baseball. Then was able to meet my wife there. We had our first child, and then Ole Miss came knocking. So it's only down the road a little bit. Wonderful school if you want to think about different institutions. But Ole Miss is a wonderful place. Stayed there for another 6 years. If you're counting, that's already 13 years, because things can go by pretty fast. Had our daughter Eden there, and then Ohio State came knocking. So Ohio State is only up north a little bit too. So those schools are within 5 hours of each other if you don't have any traffic. So great schools, think about those if you're thinking about going out of state. And then the Pacers came knocking. I'm still kind of working with them as a consultant in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that's kind of how I'm here today. So I started back at Louisville just about 14 weeks ago, and I love what I do. I get to do the thing that I love, and that's what you want to do, is find what you love and get to do it, because it's not like work, and then you get paid for it. So if you love what you do, whatever it is, if it's farming, if it's being a social media influencer, if it's being an athlete, whatever it is, make sure that you love it for all those right reasons. So today, I'm not going to lecture, I'm not going to talk too much about what all this is, but we want you to be thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion in a different lens. Not all things are going to be equal, they're just not. But we can strive to get there, and it starts with you all. We know it starts with you all because of these great speeches today. And you all were attentive, you weren't going, you weren't throwing stuff at people. You were there, you were listening, and I appreciate that. So diversity, equity, and inclusion, there's kind of different things. Diversity is just having different people in a room. And sometimes just having different people in a room is great, right? It's different perspectives. But when you have inclusion, that person at the table or the person in the room actually has a voice. When that person has a voice, they kind of feel included, right? But that doesn't mean that you have to listen to that voice. They can say it, but you don't have to act on it. But when equity happens and inclusion happens, belonging happens, and that all comes together to create belonging. And belonging means that your voice matters, is heard, and it's actually heeded and listened to, and sometimes you can make change. And that's what we're trying to get to in all that we do. So I have a little video for you. It has to do with that little voice in your head. And if there's a way that I can leave you with something, this isn't over, but I want to make sure that I leave you with something, that little voice in your head.
You know that little voice in your head?
get to watch videos like that all day. It's powerful, right? Who could think about going to a big boardroom and speaking in front of a bunch of people? Who can think about coming back to school when you're 30? I'm not 30. When you're 40, I'm not 40. When you're 46 and talking to your school that you are so proud of. Yeah, I know, I'm 46 and I look good, right? So when you come back and you speak to that group, I'm hoping that this school will be this together. This is powerful. You just don't understand. You gotta be so proud of Greene County. And I put together a little history for you of Greene County, if I can get to it. And you got a lot to be proud of. I did some research when I was a kid, but I also just realized that I didn't understand all the research. So this is one of the more progressive counties in the union of this state. And if you think about it, we're kind of considered the South if we are in Ohio or Pennsylvania or New York. We're also considered the North from those that are in Tennessee, Mississippi, Georgia, because this is one of those states where runaway enslaved people would try to get away from their slave masters in those really rough states. And this was a place where it started their refuge, where they were able to get to the Underground Railroad, and there's several stops. So I encourage you to go to several of those stops and follow it and see how treacherous it would have been just walking or running through water to get to safe space. So Greene County has been progressive for a very long time. If you think back, there's been landowners that had land as early as right after 1865, actually. So my great-great-grandfather owned a farm that was, listened to my dad the other day, we had 110 acres. We still have some of that, but he bought it in 1890 or 1894. That's crazy. 1894, I graduated in 1994. So that's been in our family for that long. And in many states, people were not allowed to own land even after slavery was over. So Greene County's really been one of those schools that you can see and have a lot of different diversity in it as well. You see lots of Asian students, Indian students, Black students, and we all seem to always be working together. So be proud of yourself, be proud of where you live, know that you're charting a path for the future. So you know the history. Jasmine's done a wonderful job. Black History Month was created by Carter G. Woodson. It started as a day, ended up, I say about 9 years later, becoming a week, and then about five or so years later, they made it into a month. So Black History Month is to celebrate people that have given great contributions to our society. It's not that it's just about Black folks, it's just that history is for everyone, and we're part of that history too. And I just want you to think about it. If you think of your best friend, you might be sitting by them. I used to love these assemblies because we'd come and just like cut up and sneak candy in. I know Principal West doesn't allow that, but we'd sneak candy in because that was a big deal. We couldn't chew gum. We would talk and laugh, and every once in a while somebody would really say something that hit us. But think of your best friend. Think about your mom or your dad. Think about if they weren't able to be in the same room as you just because of who they were. That happened to women. That happened to other people. So there are still forces out there that are trying to make that happen. And it's on you, the youth, because we're doing all that we can, but it's really on you to change your mindset. You're already doing that. You're already telling us what's right. You're already telling us that, there shouldn't be homeless people on the streets. We should be able to feed them. We're the richest country in the world, in the history of the world. There shouldn't be people that don't get to go to schools like this. There shouldn't be people that don't get to have lunch or dinner just because school is out. All those things are problems that you're going to be solving in your lifetime, and I look forward to it. So I wanted to go into sport because I'm not going to go on. I don't want you to fall asleep on me, but sport is what I use in my vehicle to be successful. And I worked my tail off to get there. But I wouldn't have made it without my parents. I wouldn't have made it without God. I wouldn't have made it without people that were friendly, and Coach Van Meter and all the people that poured into me. So everything I do is to try to make them proud and give back. And I really appreciate Dad's words about me being kind. I wasn't always kind. I wasn't always nice. But somebody cared about me, so I want to carry that forward. So for me, it started watching, and I wasn't around in 1967, 1968. But some of the people that really paved the way had to truly do some things that weren't acceptable back then. So just because these gentlemen trained their whole lives in the Olympics, and just because they chose to protest with a black fist, that's it. That's all they did. They were ostracized and kept out of things for the next 30 years. I'm proud to say that Mr. Carlos got to sit with him at an event. And if I had time, I would have pulled the picture up. He's amazing. It's funny. But he wasn't allowed to do much at all. Much of anything. He didn't get jobs. He basically was an outcast for about 30 years. And Tommy, who was with him, has had an even rougher life. Lost his family, lost his wife, and he has still kind of struggled, but he's been able to do some speaking engagements lately. Another person that I got to meet was Muhammad Ali. Yes, I'm that old. He just recently passed away. And that's someone that I patterned my whole career after. It's all in my office, it's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. So I have like 4 different posters, I have this picture of him. And it was a surprise meeting. But when I touched his hand, I felt something different than I felt in anybody else's hand. It felt like energy was just shooting out of him. And even though he was pretty ill, there was something otherworldly in him. So I can say that I've met 2 cultural icons, 2 civil rights icons. And I've met other people, but I met somebody pretty cool too, Odell Beckham Jr., right? And Jarvis Landry. So I worked with them when I was at LSU. And I had them in study hall, and I used to kick them every day, just like Coach Van Meter used to kick me. And they were just regular people. And that's what I want to say to you. I'm just a regular person, you're just a regular person. There's nothing special about me. I just learned talk. And I've had some luck, I've had some love, I've had some blessing, and I've gotten to really hang out with some really cool people. But there's some really cool people in Green County. And those people you thought about just earlier, your friends, your family, your mom, your dad, your preacher, whoever it is, take some time to get to know them. You will not believe how cool and awesome they can be. And it's impossible to hate somebody you know a little bit about. It is. Once you get to know them a little bit, you'll be like, wow, they're like me in this way. It's hard to mistreat somebody once you know them a little bit. So there's one little thing I want to leave you with, and this is what I would hope as you leave today, the assembly, that you kind of use this mixture that Muhammad Ali thought was essential to living a good life.
What would you like people to think about you when you're done? I would like for them to say he took a few cups of love. He took 1 tablespoon of patience, 1 teaspoon of generosity, 1 pint of kindness. He took 1 quart of laughter, 1 pinch of concern, and then he mixed willingness with happiness. He added lots of faith, and he stirred it up well. Then he spread it over a span of a lifetime, and he served it to each and every deserving person he met.
So thank you all so much for your time, and I hope you have a great rest of the week.
display historical figures that are African American. So they're going to be behind the table. If you want to ask them any questions about their project, they'd be glad to answer. Thank you all for being great and attentive.
We are definitely so appreciative of Mr. Derrick for sharing with us today, and we wanted to give him a little something so that he remembered, so he never, I know he can never forget Greene County Middle School, Greene County Dragons, but we've got a Greene County sweatshirt for him to wear, maybe get away with wearing it around campus a little bit. So we appreciate him. Let's give him one more round of applause. Always proud to be associated with Greene County Middle School, but maybe never as proud as hearing from some of our students today, seeing your behavior as you were a great audience. Definitely appreciate that. I get to be proud all the time of the things that you accomplish. Mr. Coward talked about in sports. I get to see some great accomplishments in sports. I get to see great accomplishments with the arts and music and visual arts and all those things. I get to see great accomplishments in the classrooms, and all that's wonderful. But none of that matters nearly as much as how we treat each other. And I get to be proud every day of watching how you all treat each other. I get to be proud of watching how you represent our community to the people that you see. So I appreciate the opportunity to get to be proud of you. We do a great job, but we can do better. And I think we all know that. We can always do better, and we're going to continue to work to do better. We're gonna change. We're in the process right now. We're talking about changing our site-based policy to where it's a very serious offense if we say something that we shouldn't say. If we make a comment we shouldn't say, or that we shouldn't use. If we say something that tears somebody down rather than builds them up. So we're in the process of making those changes. But that's not really what's important. What really is important is how we treat each other, because it's the right thing to do. So I hope we get that policy in place, and then I hope we never have to use it, because we never have to address somebody saying something derogatory to somebody else, whether it's a racial comment or anything that could be hate speech. We never want to have to use that new policy, because we want to treat each other with respect, because we're all in this thing together, guys, and you all know that. So I appreciate it very much. And again, thank Ms. Jasmine and all of our student speakers. Let's give everybody one more round of applause. Second period to get belongings, or do we need to go to third? Second, okay. So we will start, let's go ahead and start with our 6th grade, because they're in the middle. We're going to start with those who are on the bottom. And if you're